folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Hello, folks. Welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. Well, today we got a special featured guest who's in here to talk to us about the investment climate and finances around the globe. It's none other than, hey, Deon, are you there? I've got to ask him to go on mute. We've lost his camera. Here he comes.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Now, Deon, I didn't get a chance to ask you this offline because it almost looks like an Italian or Portuguese surname. So how do you pronounce your surname?
It's Rebello. It is Portuguese. Well, Portuguese descent, yes.
Okay, Rebello. Okay, well, I just want to make sure I didn't want to offend. Because it's very close to measles, mumps, and rubella, so.
Well, yeah. At school, they kind of removed the last L and O, and that was rebel. So, it depends on how you take it. So.
Well, it's probably better than rebel.
Exactly.
Just to say the least. Well, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you on. I see that you've been very busy of late. I think you had an appearance on Gareth Cliff's program, and then you've been around a few other programs since then.
Yeah, as we spoke very briefly before starting, Chris, for me, we got a message, and it's an important message to get out to the South Africans firstly, and then the world. The world is in trouble economically. If we look at what's going on globally, there's a lot of issues economically around the world. Yes, COVID-19 came, but what is where the world's markets are now was all pre-COVID. COVID, all it's done now is just accelerated that whole movement to where the economy is, the global economy. Then we look locally, and South African economy, through some bad administrations that we've had, and we suffered
Sorry, that's an understatement. I can't help but laugh.
No, you'll notice I am subtly politically correct, but the important thing is under specifically two administrations of the Zuma administrations, where this country was really pulled through the ring, and we are now suffering the impacts of that. Did it happen before? Yes. I think, unfortunately, we got a lot of very competent people in government, but I don't think there's enough solidarity behind them, and that's my personal feeling. But straight to the South African economy, we're in trouble. We're in the midst of a sovereign default. And if people say, but surely we're not, things are not that bad. If you start to unpack the numbers and you start to look at where we are right now, it's a simple thing. And this is one of our company's mottos, is get your wealth out of rands, out of fiat currencies. And we are a big proponent of physical bullion. For many, many reasons. The one being it's tangible. You can hold it, you can feel it, and you can exchange this anywhere around the world. And there's a willing buyer and, of course, a willing seller for it. So that's the great thing with physical bullion. In any size of denomination, it has a value. But again, if you then break it down, there's a lot of different types of bullion that have more value, and some have a limited value or have more regulations behind it.
Well, before we go any further, we'll talk about that in just a moment. But there's some terms you're throwing out here that I'm sure that some people are not familiar with. Of course, I'm familiar with them, but not everyone else. But you talk about sovereign crisis, sovereign debt. But I do have to take exception, Deon, to what you had to say. I mean, honestly, come on. Look, South Africa has junk bond status. That means you can get a loan at 7 or 8% when I can get it for less than 2% personally. That's not bad. Come on, man. That's not bad.
Well, Chris, if we look at that, and when we talk about a sovereign default, I mean, right now, South Africa is borrowing, for every rand we spend, 21 cents goes towards the interest payment to service that debt. Yep. We are borrowing at the rate of 2.1 billion rand a day. If that's not concerning, and I've heard some economists, especially a lot of the whole new monetary policy theory where you just buy your way out of it and you just keep producing. I mean, the US alone has produced over $11 trillion over the last 18 months and nearly 2 years. And it cannot continue.
Of debt, produced debt you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call that production. We've created. I would call that
it's creation. Yeah. And the biggest problem is the whole idea that you can buy yourself out of this is well and fine, but we're experiencing the repercussions of it. And very importantly is if we look at what is the impact of a sovereign default on the man on the streets. Firstly, as it is currency devaluation. Now, I've got a couple of these, and I'll show you one of them, and I've got a few. So technically, I am a billionaire.
Yeah, I'm from Zimbabwe.
Yeah. So why I show this, and that is hyperinflation at its greatest. Do I ever think South Africa will go there? Pray to God that's not the case. But the important thing is we are dealing with currency devaluation. The rand a couple of months ago was sitting pretty around 13.50, around there, and it's now sitting at over 16 rand. I think when I checked earlier today, it's just retracted a little bit. But yesterday it was sitting at 16 rand to the dollar.
Yep.
March last year, April last year, the rand was sitting around 19 rand to the dollar. What is that? What's the concern of rand devaluation? I'll bring in an example a little bit later when we start. I want to bring in Argentina as an example of a country that has defaulted over the last 18 months and what it's actually done to their currency. But the other things, very importantly, sovereign default, you have rising inflation, as I mentioned. We just got to look at the petrol pumps right now in South Africa. We're now paying more than 20 rand a litre for fuel. And they're expecting another 3 to 4 petrol hikes in the next coming months. That directly affects food inflation. It just starts to balloon and mushroom, and it becomes a bigger problem. The other side of it is you have a slowing down of your GDP. So that's the health of the economy. And then, of course, most importantly, every single citizen's living standards are impacted.
Well,
so, that's just
on the fuel portion. Sorry, on the fuel portion there. That's people oversimplify that quite frequently. Now there is legitimacy, and I think that's the point you're trying to make. So I don't think we're disagreeing, but there's legitimacy in the fact that petroleum is priced in dollars around the globe. That's how it's bought and sold in dollars. So whenever the rand declines, you pay more for energy. The world does. That's the one. It's not seniority, but seniorage that we have here in the States that we get to pay for it. No matter what the price is, it's in dollars. So we don't have to deal with the currency fluctuation, just the fluctuation in the value or price of petroleum. But so that definitely hurts people there. But the real reason why petroleum is so expensive in South Africa is not because of the price of petroleum. Petroleum is about less than half what it was at the peak under Barack Hussein Obama's regime when it was $180 a barrel for petroleum, let alone all the refining costs and transportation distribution. It's $76, $78 a barrel right now, so it's less than half. The reason that petroleum is so high in South Africa is that the ANC, who in the 1990s accused the National Party of racism for jumping up the price of petrol because it was controlled, called them racist for it, now has the highest taxes in the history of South Africa on a liter of petrol. That's why. If they want relief for South Africans, get rid of the taxes or lower them, but they won't be able to steal that money anymore.
Well, this is another concern, is I talk about breaking thresholds. So when we hit 15 rand to the liter and things like that, and then there was a it retracted and there was a recovery on the fuel price versus the dollar, as you said. Mm-hmm. Government then just increased taxes on that same amount. So then we were still paying 15 rand because they knew that we could tolerate that level.
You were adjusted to it. They cooked the frog in the pot.
Exactly. So just to break it down right now, in 2011, levies and taxes per litre was around 4.48 rand. Right now, it's 10.10 rand.
Yep.
That's 125% increase.
While the price of petrol is half what it was back then.
Yeah, exactly.
So people blame the oil companies for being greedy, and we can have that argument. Oil companies may or may not be greedy, but the reality is, and listen, I know this, Deon, because I live in the state in the United States that has the single highest state taxation on a gallon of gasoline. We have the record in Pennsylvania, and it wasn't good enough that someone beat us out a couple years ago, so they hiked it even higher, so we could still have the highest. It's ridiculous. And of course, you have federal tax on top of that. So that's, let's get back to what you're talking about there. So I think I'm going to wind up, that's why it's called the Indaba Conversation with Chris. I'm going to probably wind up interrupting a few times here because go back and forth. But you started talking about Argentina, but let me throw something out there, and this will probably play into the Argentina piece here too. And before you get to that, you talked about currency devaluation. Here's the sad story that nobody likes to talk about. If you go back 30 years ago, there were several internationally traded currencies that were, widely traded. You had the British pound, You had the Swiss franc, surprisingly, for such a small country.
Yeah.
It was traded globally. The Japanese yen was a currency. These were reserve currencies. People had parked their resources in these currencies. The dollar, the Deutschmark, those were the reserve currencies 30 years ago. And then the euro comes along. When the euro comes along, it swallows up so many things. And what it does to the pound is it makes the pound so much less influential. And if it wasn't for Canary Wharf and the financial sector in London, the British pound would be nothing. But it's because of that and so much of the flow of currency through there that keeps London even involved. But today, really, there's only two reserve currencies. And now the renminbi and the yuan from China, that's nonsense. I don't care what the World Trade Organization tries to tell us. It's only the dollar and the euro. And the reality is this. When Greece and Portugal and Spain and Italy and Ireland were on the verge of collapse, the Germans intervened by pumping cash into those economies to keep them from collapsing because they're all part of the Eurozone. Were it not for that, the euro would have collapsed. Nobody would have bought the euro. They all would have fled to the dollar. But the dollar wasn't a safe currency because our presidents were busy printing money and devaluing our currency every single day through quantitative easing, which I call quantitative bullshit. It devalued our currency. So the dollar wasn't a safe refuge. So people were hands tied. Do I go to the euro? Do I go to the dollar? That's the reason that the euro didn't collapse. And the dollar, frankly, should have been worth a lot less than it is than otherwise. And that puts all the rest of you, like in South Africa, in a real bind. Honestly, looking at the economic conditions in South Africa, I'm astounded it's not 25 rand to the dollar. Anyway, so if you want to talk about that and then get to Argentina.
Yeah. But you say that, and I was actually asked a question saying, is the rand undervalued? And I actually
overvalued.
No, literally, I had to stop myself thinking. I had to reread the question because the person was asking, is the rand undervalued? And I was like, no, it's the opposite. Our rand, if as you say, if we had to look at global economics and we had to then gauge it based on the price of goods, the rand is severely overvalued and it has to go past the 20 rand mark, the 25 rand mark. Of course, living in South Africa, we don't want to hear that.
Yeah,
we want to make sure that rand stays as low as possible because that affects, as you say, our fuel. It affects all our imports. It affects everything literally that the country relies on. And we are very reliant upon imports in this country. Unfortunately, over the last 25 years, the manufacturing, and that's my background, I come from a mining manufacturing background, is if I had my way, I would be pushing manufacturing on this continent like there's no tomorrow, because that is where there is growth in jobs and all that kind of thing. And you're producing locally.
But South Africa's gone completely the opposite direction. You roll the clock back 20 years ago, 90% of shoes or clothing, 90% of clothing sold in South Africa was manufactured in South Africa, and 70% of shoes sold in South Africa were manufactured in South Africa. Today, it's like 10% of shoes and 20% of textiles. Totally eviscerated. When the multi-fiber agreement expired, that was the end of the South African textile industry.
Yeah, and that's it. So, of course, we're diverging here, but it's important for people to understand that these things, like it's a slow, and I use this analogy, and please forgive the visuals that it will give you, but South Africa is like a frog in water in a pot that's slowly being heated and heated and heated. The problem is a frog does not know the water's boiling until it's boiling. And that's literally where we are right now. We're at that point of a fiscal cliff where we actually don't have a choice. Last year, Tito Mboweni, when he was the finance minister, during the October midterm speech, he made it very clear that in order for South Africa to avoid a sovereign debt crisis, we needed to start to reform certain things. And the first thing he spoke about was government salaries and a zero increase in that. We are now towards the end of this year, and that's already been broken. We look at all the municipalities, all your SOEs, all those, there must have been massive reforms. And unfortunately, unless you've got a massive buy-in of the people that are producing these policies and actually then filtering it down, you're not going to have change. And as much as I believe that Tito Mboweni actually really wants to change this country, and his predecessor also, and the same with Cyril, we can all have our opinions on these people. They are politicians and they're running our country. And we'd like to believe, or maybe I'd like to believe, that there is some good intention behind what people do. But the truth is this: we're already too far down the line. We already are past that point of no return. And then, we just mentioned the devaluation of the rand. And, Chris, you can jump in like you do, and I appreciate it because I can keep talking. I'll keep
here's
talking
the thing.
as long as you like.
I knocked the train off the rails a little while ago. It's almost like a coal train coming from Mpumalanga headed down to Richards Bay, getting knocked off because somebody stole the tracks. Anyway, so I knocked this off a little bit ago. You were about to talk about sovereign default, and you're going to talk about the case of Argentina. We could also use Argentina in the 80s, in the 90s. We can also use a whole bunch of others. But why don't you go ahead and let's go with that direction now, talk about the Argentina, because I think a couple people are curious. You mentioned Argentina.
Yeah, why Argentina? And beginning of last year, January of 2020, the peso to the dollar, the Argentinian peso to the dollar was around 59 pesos to the dollar. So in rand terms, it's like 15 rand to the dollar. So we're comparing it like that to the dollar. They defaulted in June of 2020. So in other words, they could not afford to repay the interest. And this is an important thing here. The interest on the loans that they had generated and accumulated.
Not even the principal.
Exactly. And the important thing is, if you go and see where the peso is right now, and I of course, before the show I checked, and it's over 100 pesos to the dollar. So what does that mean? Now, if I had 1 million pesos in the bank, and it turns out in rands, it's not that much. I thought it was a lot more, but I was quite disappointed. So in US dollars, it's going to be even less. But we're going to use 1 million pesos for the example. If I kept 1 million pesos in an Argentinian bank, and I then took another 1 million pesos and I went and bought physical gold. So I bought, no, that's not my gold.
That looks like platinum or silver. There's gold.
Yeah, there's gold. So if I went and bought 1 million pesos worth of gold, and I just went and stored it and held it, so I didn't do anything else, but I allowed the economy to run. Right now, though, that same amount of gold originally from 1 million pesos is now worth 2 million pesos. So as the value and the buying value, so when you have currency devaluation, and this is what we know, you go into the shops a couple of years ago, a year ago, what you were spending 6, 7, 1,000 rand might have been 3 bags of groceries. Right now, I challenge anyone locally in South Africa to walk out of a shop with a full bag of groceries that doesn't come close to 1,000 rand. And so that's currency depreciation and devaluation. So that 1 million pesos is still 1 million pesos, but what is it buying you? So over the period of that time, Chris, the pesos in the bank is still 1 million, but it's worth half. And yet if it was in physical bullion, like gold, it would be double. And that's not to do with anything that gold has performed or not performed. It's just been the normal cycle that gold's gone through.
Well, that's, not here's the thing, not to throw a spanner in the works for you, Deon. I think it's a legitimate question to bring up. Gold, platinum, silver, these are commodities. Commodity prices, Commodity prices boom, they bust, they go up, they go down. And I think that's a legitimate question to ask about that. I mean, if you go back to the 2007, 2008 timeframe, virtually every commodity on the planet, whether it's sugar or maize or petroleum, natural gas, gold, diamonds, everything out there, they all surged because China was buying up everything under the sun, and they swooped into the markets, manganese, cobalt, you name it. They didn't even use the stuff. They just piled it up in China, trying to stockpile stuff. And they still got some of the stockpiles they're working down from. But they drove the price of everything up, and inflation went up all over the world. And it had nothing to do with the economics of the planet at that time. It was just because of hoarding. That would be my assessment. But gold as a commodity goes up and down. And here's the other problem. Before you address the question about it being a commodity that goes up and down in price because of demand or supply, here's the other question: is that we had a real problem in America. We had some genius socialists who made it illegal to own gold in the United States. Yeah. For decades, we couldn't even own gold. These criminal bastard socialists wouldn't even let us own gold. Who do they think they are? They backed our currency with gold, but that became ridiculous. We never have enough gold to back the size of our economy. Today, it's $26 trillion a year of GDP. That's a hell of a lot of gold. But they finally took us off that. Nixon took us off the gold standard. People freaked out. But the bottom line is that the currency is only worth what people are willing to put into it, whether it's seashells or wampum belts or it's copper, bronze coins, silver coins. It's what people value. And I suspect you're going in the direction that gold and platinum and silver, because they're intrinsic, they're real, they're physical, and they're not exactly ubiquitous, they're in limited supply, will always have an intrinsic value that people will seek. Did I get that right, or did I speak for you?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
So, and again, traditionally, and if you go through our time, gold and silver have always been natural hedges where big investment companies like the likes of JP Morgan Chase and the companies like that around the world would then put all their investments into in times like where we are now, where there's uncertainty. The economies are very in a lot of trouble. And of course, inflation is now hiking at rates that we have not seen in I think more than 50, 60 years.
Well, unless you live in Zimbabwe.
Well, yes, as I said, I mean, and I do love Zimbabwe, and I was actually, funny enough, there last March, and to see a country and a group of people that are really, they know how to hustle, and considering with the what they're dealing with, they just get on with life, but unfortunately, that's not going to carry change. But anyway, back to the whole thing with gold and that. So gold and silver are natural hedges, and they've always been, from an investment perspective, all over the world. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we go into these periods of uncertainty and the stock markets, I mean, if you look at the S&P, it's at an all-time high. It's at records that have never been seen. Mm-hmm. And again, you spoke of quantitative easing, and I'll not use your term, but it's true. So COVID hit all the economies. Every single country, or the majority of the countries around the world, went into heavy lockdown. We all had to learn to run around our houses or run on our balconies, things like that. We had to get on with it. But of course, none of us were working, and the governments knew they needed to inject the economies to stop them from completely collapsing. So the quantitative easing came in with that, but they just kept producing and producing. And of course, that produces a bubble. So if you look at the results on the stock market now in the States, you will see that a lot of those companies are seriously overvalued. And we've seen this before. What happens when stocks are overvalued, where they're not a true reflection of the price that they're actually worth? That's a bubble.
Yeah, well, the internet bubble in the 1980s. I invested in a lot of internet stocks because I knew a lot about IT. I was in the Army and I wanted to have money for my retirement and make money. So I invested a lot in internet stocks. But I'm not a person that invests on emotion. I'm not a person that invests on hype. I'm a person that invests on numbers. Even though I'm not a mathematician, I am smart enough to invest. And so I looked at these companies which had great growth, and I rode the growth. Netscape, I did well on. America Online, or as we used to call it, America on Hold, and a bunch of other companies like CD Now at the time. And at some point, as we got through 97, getting towards 98, I'm looking at these companies. I'm like, okay, yeah, clicks. Why? That's great. Eyeballs. Who cares? That's not revenue, let alone profit. You got to generate revenue. You've got salaries to pay. You got development costs. You got to pay electricity. At some point, you have to start making money. You can't just keep issuing shares in an initial public offering and a subsequent offering. So I moved out of all those stocks. I moved out of all of them. And in 98, people lost their butt. I didn't lose anything because I was out, because it didn't make any sense. Same thing with Enron. Friends of mine invested. Chris, you got to get this company's amazing, man. It's like they're making money. And they were making money fictionally on paper. It was not real. It didn't exist. And so I looked at Enron, and I saw like dozens of subsidiaries. And I'm like, okay, that revenue is booked here and they're counting it here. I'm like, I'm getting a headache. I don't understand this. I'm not investing in this. I don't invest in things I don't understand. But gold and silver and platinum, they're pretty easy to understand.
Exactly. And so the global economy is in trouble, and there is talk. And if you go and look at any global economist right now, we're on the literally that edge of a massive market correction. I mean, I've seen some economists calling it up to 80% correction that we will have, which is to the same level of a Great Depression. Now, as we're talking about that, what would that mean? Now, I'm living in rands, you're living in dollars. Mm-hmm. Of course, the economies would collapse if we had to go to that proportion. Is it realistic? Can it happen? It's happened before. And where we are right now with the current fiscal policies and the new monetary policy that is being used around the world right now, it's just buying yourself out of it. And Personally, I don't think it's the way to go. But again, I'm not an economist, and that's not my side. But what we do is we pay attention to these things, because ultimately, as when we started this business, we knew we needed to get into a position where I've got an RA, and I'm sure in the States that would be your pension.
I think RA stands for retirement account.
Yeah.
Or annuity. It might be similar here to what we call an individual retirement account, an IRA.
Yeah. So, and I've got one, and a lot of South Africans do. And for me, what really spurred me on was people are putting away money every single month into these policies, and they're keeping them in rands. And at the end of it, when I'm 65 or 70, and I want to then start to enjoy that money that I put away, the truth is, and this is the feedback you get. A lot of people say, well, the markets didn't perform as well as they did, and you will get, instead of 2 million, you would get 1.8. Then you say, okay, fine, 1.8. But then they say, okay, you can only take half now, and the other half we will then pay it out over time. It's not yours. The people that sell it are ultimately the people that make all the money. The difference with this piece of ounce of gold here is once it's in your hands and you paid for it, it is fully yours. We don't own it. We don't make commissions on it every time it goes up or it grows in value. Once you purchased it, you are the owner entirely own that ounce of gold.
Well, let's just
Yeah.
I would let people know, folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. Today we're talking about sovereign debt, potential investment opportunities, ways to diversify your wealth and income. And my guess is Deon Rebello there, not Rebello.
Rebello.
Right. make sure we get that correct. Well, listen, it now seems an apropos time to shift and let's talk about what it is you do and what your company is, since that's part of the reason we got you on here. Because as you could probably deduce from the conversation, I could talk economics all day long, and I'm happy to do it. So let's talk about what exactly is DCX Bullion. I mean, is this like S Coin? People are familiar with S Coin. Are you a manufacturer of coins? Are you a trader in coins? Just kind of let us know what it's all about.
Okay, so we are a bullion business that sells bullion in the form of silver, gold, and platinum. We're one of the only companies right now that actually sells a platinum ounce. There are, Rand Refinery, who is a custodian of precious metals in this country, has been wanting to release a Krugerrand in platinum, and they've been talking about this for the last 10 years. They did a limit release, but of course then the cost and value of them is not worth the actual bullion, the grams that they are. So of course we are a business that focuses on physical bullion. Originally, we actually started from silver. And as I mentioned, I come from a mining background, and for me, I grew up knowing that gold is a great long-term hedge. Gold people keep, and it's a store of wealth. And then I was introduced to silver, and I saw the difference of an ounce of gold, which currently is around, and I'll talk in dollar terms just to simplify it. An ounce of gold right now is around $1,740 an ounce. And an ounce of silver is valued right now at about $23 an ounce. Same weight, different value. But and then I started to do a lot of research into silver, and I started to see, and I just had a quick look at some of the comments that silver and gold have been majorly shorted. In other words, they're pulling the price of it down. It's for people that don't know what that means. And I can tell you now, a lot of the research we then started to do was, where is silver going? What is its availability? All those kind of things. And we started to realize that silver is severely undervalued as a commodity. Firstly, second to oil, it is the most used commodity on this planet. Literally, as we're speaking here right now, every single piece of electronics that you have, from a cell phone to the screen you're looking through, to your fridges, you name it, it has silver in it. And, the interesting thing is, if we look at where we're going, and the world that we're moving towards, and this next decade is going to be quite a definitive decade. I'd almost put it to the same level as the Industrial Revolution in terms of change. And the interesting thing is, we are starting to move away from carbon producing things such as fuel. So they produce a lot of carbon, and of course we know with climate change, if you believe it or don't, it's a fact as far as government policies around the world, that there's a major drive to stop the use of carbon emitting fuels and products. So silver comes into the play here where, and of course it was a young South African, well, he's pretty much the same age as me, maybe a little bit older, who's now the richest man in the world, Elon Musk. And, you know, he said that he would produce 1 million Teslas, electric vehicles, by 2020. And people thought he was crazy. I mean, who's this guy that's talking about, and I mean, NASA thought he was a crazy guy by the fact he's saying, I'm going to produce rockets that will take off and land and reduce the expenses that you guys could not get right for decades. And NASA laughed at him and they thought this is a crackpot, you know, like, how dare you? Now, who's using Elon Musk? Who's using his big companies? I mean, NASA are now using him to facilitate a lot of their rockets and flights into space. And the interesting thing is Elon had this vision about electric cars. And why I'm bringing this up, because it plays a very important story for silver and for, funny enough, platinum, but we'll get into that also. So silver is going to be utilized in mass amounts on as far as all your electronics, your electric vehicles. So Elon made that prediction of in 2020 that he'd produce 1 million Teslas. He said by 2025, I will be producing 1 million Teslas per annum. We just have to go and put on the radio now, and every single major producer in the world is producing electric cars. So there's major push through governments, and a lot of the drive through Europe and in the States is pushing to actually incentivize people to buy electric. It makes a lot of sense as far as power and not utilizing, creating more carbon emitting gases. The thing is, and this is where, you know, you look at the whole drive in that, and I mean, China has got their drive with the 2060 as far as their movement also away from it. And this also goes to a lot of other things. I mean, literally everything that we have will start to have, we know there's a carbon footprint to everything, but it's now going to start to become greater and greater. So of course there is that move to electrics. And as far as silver is concerned, the biggest consumers of silver right now industrially, and that's a difference from gold, that both silver and platinum have, is they have a massive industrial application. So they're not just a jewelry or an investment bullion, they're also industrial. And silver's biggest demand right now is solar panel technology. And the two biggest countries that have the biggest uptake on solar panels right now is China and India, which are your two biggest economies or populations in the world, not economies, but populations in the world. And the growth within that sector alone, they're talking up to 90 million ounces over the next 2 to 3 years just into solar panel technology. You look at wind turbine technologies, you start to unpack this whole thing. And this whole mega trend, and this is what they call it, you talk about the dot-com trend, Chris. They're talking about the mega trend here of being in the trillions compared to, you know, so the money that's going to be pumped into this. And we're seeing it happening right now. And this is where silver is going. So it's also very exciting to know that this is a product that is severely undervalued at $23, $24 an ounce. The projections have been that silver should hit 3 figures in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, that would be historic. It's never been at that level.
Well, if you gauge where it was in the late 1970s, 1980s, when it did peak, if you took it into the same
and
value,
adjusted for inflation, yes, you were correct. Yeah. It would be there. That's true.
So it would equate to around $100.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I was looking actual dollars, not inflation, just dollars. That's fair. Well, but of course we got to, you know, and this is where not to throw a spanner in the works, but just to bring this point up because I think it's fair. Is that
absolutely?
First off, 2 points. The first point is that with commodities like this, I kind of alluded to earlier, they are subject to big market players, and big market players can be smaller than people realize. In the 1970s, the Bunker family, or the Hunt family, Bunker Hunt, Nelson Hunt, those guys, the Hunt brothers, they tried to corner the silver market. They thought they were clever. The biggest use of silver at that time, other than for coinage and things like that, was in the photo industry. And Eastman Kodak took a big hit. It was one of the first things that really put Kodak camera company under pressure, and they're still around today, but they're just a shadow of what they once were. Digital finally almost killed them, but the silver rush is what really hurt hurt them. This late 70s, early. So the Bunker, Hunt, Nelson Hunt, and those guys, they tried to corner it, and they wound up losing their shirts. They lost over $1 billion, if I recall correctly, at that time, which who knows how much money that is today. That's a phenomenal amount of money. But they had a disastrous impact. They pushed the price of silver up, and it made it more expensive. Film was more expensive. Consumers were hit by it. But conversely, I suppose if you'd invested in stocks that had that sold film, you might have done well. So that's one concern that's possible. Now, there's a coming backlash, and no one's talking about this except for maybe the Danish climate guy, Bjorn Lomborg, I think his name is. He's one of the few people talking about it, but I've been talking about this for years. People talk about this economy with green energy, and you didn't make this claim, so I'm not laying this on you. There's no such thing as green. That's utter nonsense. Everything produces an output and waste, and it's just a question of how much it is and what level it is. And what's not included, because they always like to say that we don't pay the true price of gasoline at the pump for petrol because we don't pay for the output, the carbon dioxide, the sulfur dioxide. So if we tax you and you pay the true cost, then you would want a car. Well, they don't. They use the same logic in the opposite direction and fail to include the ecological damage done by mining for rare earth elements, which are necessary for wind turbine blades and generators and for solar photovoltaic panels. Now, silver is a bit different. You get that through traditional mining, and you can mitigate the damage there. So it's not. But when it comes to rare earth elements, there is a coming backlash against the destruction of mountainsides and water tables, and this is coming. So when Elon Musk talks about building 1 million electric vehicles, and others talk about producing all electric vehicles by 2035, my question to them is that where are you going to get all the lithium, unless you find some other means to do this? And which mountains and whose natural environment are you going to utterly obliterate so you can make cars so you can feel good about being green? But so the two spanners I had here are that you have to worry when it comes to these hedges. There's always a possibility, so people should be fully informed, I think, of someone like China buying up all the commodities in 2008, driving price higher, which could benefit you, but then if there's a bust because there's no underlying reason for it to be there, and the same with the hunts. And then the other thing is that markets change. But I think on that one, it's less a spanner and more just letting people know markets can change, but with silver, it's consistent. There's great industrial uses for it. It's always going to be in demand, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's solar photovoltaic, traditional film, which is still made, by the way. You can still buy real film if you want. People don't realize that because they're all using handies, mobiles for their photos, but that's still out there. There's other industrial uses. So I guess it's really only one spanner and just kind of an awareness. Thoughts on what I had to say?
So, Chris, I'm actually happy you mentioned that because as I've spoken about the electric vehicle technology and that going forward, it's also limited. And yes, it's here to stay and it is going to grow. And we're going to see more electric vehicles on our roads than naturally aspirated vehicles within the next 10 years. And in some countries, within that period of time, they'll be completely eliminated. So, and the one benefit is silver is mined. And I know when you talk about as far as green and producing of carbon footprints, and everything produces a carbon footprint. So we're not going to get away from that. But mining, a lot of silver is actually a byproduct of a lot of other mining. And also a lot of silver that's currently on ground is recycled. So there's going to be a massive drive. And I know that in China, there are literally towns and cities that are just focused on recycling of precious metals. So all your old computers, all those things, they're breaking them down. They're extracting the copper, they're extracting the zinc, the platinum, the gold, the silver.
Palladium.
Platinum.
No. It's two different metals. Palladium and platinum, two different.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, so, I wasn't correcting your South African English. I was just throwing palladium.
No, I realized that. As I said that, I did realize that. Forgive me. So, because palladium plays a very important story to what I'm going into next.
Okay.
Is the silver's here to stay? Is it undervalued? Severely undervalued.
Okay.
Do we believe that it has a place in what you're doing from where you're buying to you want to negate the depreciation of the rand, you want to negate the loss in the dollar strength if there are these collapses, if there's sovereign default. It's not about, and this is another thing, Chris, I don't believe everyone should go out tonight or tomorrow morning and take everything and put it and buy physical bullion. I mean, that's gambling. It's about diversifying and making sure that you negating exposure. And
you're reducing risk. That's what you're trying to reduce the risk.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say is about risk. And as a business, we're very mindful of that even how we conduct ourselves as a business, we're very aware of risk, but from another side, as far as, the criminal aspects of risk. But when we talk about risk globally, that's where bullion will come in. And that's where bullion will be able to, at least if you've hedged your wealth out of fiat currencies like the rand and the dollar, and they're into the classes of gold, silver and platinum, they have that ability to at least maintain, like I said, in Argentina, that's to $1 million worth, $1 million Argentinian pesos worth of gold is now worth 2 million. So it's at least maintained, and there's been some saving grace of that person's wealth. And that's what we're talking about here. So silver does have its place. And as I said, it's here to stay. And the important thing is it's definitely got massive growth, and it has been severely pushed down. We can go into technical things, but I think we'll leave that for another time when we talk about Basel III, and you got the COMEX and the LBMA, which is the London Bullion Market. And of course, the Basel III has been introduced now, and it's been all the big, the COMEX, which is the American Commodities Exchange, and the LBMA, which is the London Bullion Market Association. They basically, in those countries, the custodians of bullion and commodities. In this country, we ran refinery, and go around the world, you got Shanghai and so on.
We're gonna start losing our audience though with the terms like that. I mean, next you're gonna throw out you're gonna throw out LIBOR, the London Interbank Exchange Rate, or maybe the M1, M2, M3 money supply, and people are like, what the hell are they talking about? But
I want to keep it simple.
Let me throw something out there. Let me throw something out there and adjust this really quick, okay? So a few days ago, I had a new person show up on my channel, rock up on my channel, and was interested in becoming a subscriber, and ask a very on the surface of a very insulting question, but understanding South Africans and the South African psyche, I get where the question came from, so I didn't take offense to it. But I mean, as an American, he comes and goes, all right, so he didn't say this. Basically, like, what's your grift? He's asking me, what are you all about? Who are you shilling for? I mean, what's your objective? What's your purpose? Why are you doing this? To which I didn't take offense, because I get it. South Africans are tired of being sold down the river by the next great leader, the next great solution. Okay. This person's going to save us. This is the thing. So, so I was asked that question. I just told the guys straight up. I said, "Look, I'm retired from active service. I don't have to do this. I mean, it's not salty cracks. I'm not wealthy, but I'm not out picking up raisins on the side of the street to eat them. So, I mean, I do this because it interests me and because I want to make a difference. And I suspect that's kind of a role you're playing here. But what I'm beginning at is that South Africans want to know, okay, how does this help me? We're talking about diversification here, and we started to talk about your company. So we're talking about bullion and diversification. How exactly, if someone's interested, can they get into this and do this? I mean, because you don't just like walk down to the shop and go, I'll take three ounces of platinum here. I'll take them in the form of coins. How exactly does that work? And from your perspective for your company, everybody has got to make a living. Obviously, you have a business. You got to make a living. Do you make your living, with cash in transit heists? No. Do you make your living from farming? No. So how exactly do you make it from the sale? Do you make it from commissions? Because financial managers, they get a commission. Even mutual funds take a percentage off the top to manage those stocks and things. So if we could kind of get into that to let people know, because I think there's some people in the audience who expressed interest in learning more.
Okay. So to get straight to the point there. Is we as I said, where we make our money is on the manufacturing, and it's a very small margin. This is a business that's not designed where we got massive margins there. We got to remain competitive to the market, and our pricing is 100% to market related pricing. So it's a volumes game.
So I'm sorry, so Deon. So DCX Bullion produces the actual bullion. You actually mine it and make the coins or whatever, the bars, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, we got a manufacturing partner who's come in and he manufactures for us. He has a manufacturing license, of course, and then he has an association and a certification to Rand Refinery, and he also holds precious metals certificate, so he can produce and hold unfinished gold and platinum.
All of which is tightly regulated. That's why it's necessary to have those certifications.
Yeah. So that's why I mentioned that is silver has no regulations. You can own grams of silver, little granules. You can own ounces of silver. You can own bars. And on our silver, we go from an ounce of silver right up to a 2 kilogram bar, which we've designed specifically for investing purposes. You know, it's cast, so it's cheaper to produce. So we're keeping the price down. On gold and platinum, it's different because you, as a civilian, you cannot hold unfinished articles. The only gold you can hold is in the form of a finished article. So be it a Krugerrand or be it a medallion or small gold bars. But now there's a problem here. When we start to talk about Krugerrands, people say, but yeah, there's a lot of value in them. Yes, there are, because they're bullion and they hedge against, and they have the same reaction to any other bullion. The problem is this, and we very mindful of it, is Krugerrands are legal tender. Mm-hmm. You spoke about it earlier about in the States where they record gold. If that ever had to happen, and God forbid it did have to happen, of course, the government could recall everything that's a property of the government in the first place. I mean, that is a legitimate legal means. And that would then fall in that. To say that they would, who knows? We're not in that position and we're not facing that. But where Krugerrands are problematic is this, is if I as a South African choose to immigrate and I want to leave South Africa and I've been buying an ounce of gold every single month or every 6 months, and I've accrued a million rands worth of Krugerrands. You by law cannot leave this country with a million rands worth of Krugerrands. You'll be lucky if you can walk out with 5 on your personal.
Because they give you what, the face value of the Krugerrand or what?
No, because it's legal tender. So they actually limit South Africans with the amount that you can actually leave this country with.
Well, there's a good reason for that. Otherwise, the country would have circled the drain already.
Well, exactly. And gold bars, you can buy them in small denominations, but they serialized. You need certificates, and we get it all the time. I mean, we are a gold producing country. So when you mentioned it, we got to have legislation that cuts down people holding gold dust and that because of illegal mining. So it's very clear on that. One thing is where medallions come into their own class and where they really sit above Krugerrands and bars and things like that in gold and platinum is because they are classified like jewelry and collector coins. So, you know, your sovereign coins, like our Krugerrand is a sovereign coin in South Africa. Your American Eagle is a sovereign coin in America. But in this country, it's a collector coin, an American Eagle. And so that would fall into that same class. So as jewelry, you wear it, you can take, and we as far as gold is concerned, we sell from 1/10 of an ounce, which is about 3.2 grams, right up to a 32-ounce gold medallion. And that's about a kilogram. It's about 1.1 gram of gold. And you could put that in a box and it's fully legal. So this is the important thing is I've heard guys, yeah, but they can take a whole lot of Krugerrands. If it's not legal, then we're not interested. You know, everything as a business we do is above board. We've aligned as associate partners to Tax Consulting South Africa, which helps us and assists us with CGT, immigration, things like that. So we have to go to everything by the book. So gold, like I said, we go from 1/10 of an ounce right up to a kilogram. We offer a full range there to meet all investment needs, because not everyone has R1 million to buy 1 kilogram of gold. Yet there are people that can afford to be buying 1/10 of an ounce, which is 3 grams, which is about 3,500 rand. Platinum is the same thing. It's also, as I said, it needs to be a finished article. We currently just sell a 1 ounce platinum, but we are, because of demand, starting to look at actually increasing our sizes on those.
Now, there's a couple questions in chat. Let me get to very quickly. Johan Eisel, who's a music promoter and producer, and the spouse of one of South Africa's best Afrikaans performers, Giselle, says, do Nelson Mandela coins carry any value? I think those are collector coins. Those aren't sovereign coins, are they?
Yeah, no, they're collector coins. But now I want to just, there's a myth here. And you know, when you talk about Krugerrands, I've had people saying, you know, I got this Krugerrand from 1967. What's the value of it? And amazingly, when you sell any bullion, that be it a Krugerrand, be it a bar, be it a medallion, you will only get the price of the bullion per ounce. Mm-hmm. You know, the actual price on the day, the spot price of that bullion per day. Doesn't mean because it's a Krugerrand, it holds more value. You know, I've got a beautiful, like I said, this is a silver Krugerrand, and you can see the date on there. It's not 2020. This means something to me personally. This is the year my daughter was born.
Oh.
That's the only real value it has. Does it have any value?
You mean as a coin, but it has value as silver.
Yeah. Yes, it has. Yes, does it have more value than this ounce of silver here?
No, it doesn't.
Big five. No, it doesn't. So that's the same thing. So you will get collectors, and as of course, collecting is a worldwide phenomena. But when we're talking about this is about investing. So if you got Mandelas and things like that, hold on to them. Yes, they are bullion, and they are a hedge away from the rand, 100%. But start to look on how you invest forward, and start to ask the right questions on where you're investing and who you're investing through. You know, Chris, as I said, I mean, for me, the important thing here, this is not about trying to sell my business to people. Mm-hmm. My mission here, and it's very simple, is to get people's mindset shifted away and realize what I'm talking about, that if they go online tonight and they go into another company and they're purchasing bullion because they heard me speak about the importance to be moving wealth out of bullion, I'm happy. You know, we offer some fantastic services. As I mentioned, we got tax consulting South Africa. We got Fidelity Security Group. They do our vaulting and deliveries. So we've looked to really make sure that we offer our clients a full service. But then you say, you know, like to own an ounce of gold right now, to buy that's about 28 to about 29,000 rand. I don't have 29,000 rand sitting around.
That's where I was going to go next. I mean, a lot of my audience, because of the destruction of South Africa's economy, it's salty cracks come the third week of the month, and so a lot of folks don't have a lot of spare cash to invest. So, I mean, I can't buy an ounce of gold. I mean, come on, that's. I mean, so how do we get into this at a lower rate? And that's where you're headed.
Yeah. So of course we do the bulk purchases, and I'm more than happy to facilitate those. So anyone that wants to look to move any amounts from 10,000 or however much, even 5,000 rand to me, you know, we consider those bulk purchases. But we then looked at this, and we realized that we needed to make this accessible to everybody. Mm-hmm. And how I was inspired is one of our best long-serving clients. She's a woman based in Langebaan. She's no longer there, so I'll use her name because she's no longer there. Barbara from Langebaan. And she's in her mid to late 60s, and she every single month has been purchasing 1 ounce of silver every single month. Now, it's insignificant. We're talking about 500 rand a month, and she's been buying it every single month. But if you do that over 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, what does it happen? You start to generate this wealth that's building up in small percentages on a monthly basis. So she was the inspiration to what we now call the monthly Medallion Club. And what that essentially is and we'll use abbreviated term, which is the MMC, but it is the monthly Medallion Club. And what we do there is we offer silver, gold, and platinum from a minimum on silver from 375, gold on 500, and platinum on 450. And we offer 3 packages where they increase. And then we offer a 4th package where you can nominate an amount up to the value of 10,000 rand. You can also, in that package 4, choose to say you don't want to spend 850 in package 2, but you'd like to spend 1,000 rand in package, which is between package 2 and 3. You can do that. So but the important thing with this, and this separates us from anyone else that has offering these kind of investment plans where you are starting to build your wealth into physical bullion, is every single month when we do and we actually did it today, where all the MMC clients, their notifications went off, and we then do a price lock, and we actually lock in their bullion for the month. So whatever you bought, be it gold, silver, or platinum, you are buying grams of gold and silver every single month. And the important thing is, especially with platinum and gold, is platinum and gold, you can't own half an ounce worth of granules of gold or platinum. But in this thing, you can. And the lovely thing with this, Chris, is say you get to half an ounce worth of gold and you've done it over a year or a year and a half. And then you contact us saying, listen, you'd like to liquidate that and move it into something else. The lovely thing is where gold's sitting at now, $1,750, and say at that point it's around $2,000 to $2,300 an ounce, we will pay you out on that liquidation price. But what's amazing is your gold has been growing in grams, and that value goes up. And that's the difference here is you are owning grams of gold, silver, and platinum on a monthly basis. And we made the system very simple and easy, where if you choose to do a stop payment for one of the months and things like that, you can do it. So it is very user friendly, and it's designed to be accessible for the masses. The lovely thing is you can have it vaulted with us, and then we cover your insurance and vaulting fee, or we can get it delivered to you. So once you achieve an ounce, we get that delivered to you, and then of course there will be a charge for that.
So folks don't have to buy an ounce because it's prohibitively costly for a lot of folks, particularly those on fixed income or low income. It can accumulate in the account, and once you have an ounce, if you really want to lay your hands on that, you can have it delivered to you. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
So that's the exciting thing. But I just want to jump back to something we were talking about earlier when you spoke about silver and batteries and all of that. And I said there's you raise a very important thing, because we haven't spoken much about platinum. We know it from the autocatalytic converters in cars, which reduces your gas emissions from your vehicle. And over years, there was a move from platinum into palladium, which you mentioned. And now there's a massive trend, and it's already started to happen, where there's a move back into platinum based on its availability, and that there's a whole story behind that. But the important thing is, where's platinum going? If we look at where it's sitting around right now, I think it's about $1,100 an ounce. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is, you talk about electric cars, and they are limited. And this, we can just finish off with this if you like, but where platinum is going to go, and you spoke about the investment houses. Mm-hmm. When I see an uptake from investment houses into platinum of 145% over the last 2 years, I've got to pay attention that they are aware of something that's going on. So there's a definite trend back into platinum from an AutoCAD perspective, but we know that that's going to be reduced. The biggest problem with battery powered vehicles is this: as soon as they start to go to your big haul trucks and stuff like that, the power to weight ratio starts to be eliminated. A big Superlink truck will take about 30 tons of payload. Now, if you're having to take half of that of your actual power source, you're not going to make money. So the next technology, and this is really, and interesting enough, Japan's building their whole economy on this product. It's hydrogen.
Namibia is trying to get in that game too with an investment that's larger than their entire country's GDP, $9.4 billion.
Yes. Now, the amazing thing is hydrogen power, as far as hydrogen powered vehicles, and especially on your big long haul trucks and things like that, is definitely a trend that's coming into play. And the amazing thing is, if we think that platinum was used in abundance in autocats, in the production of hydrogen to actually produce it, they use vast amounts of platinum. And then even in the energy cells within the vehicles, the amount of platinum used there is 5 times what is currently used in an autocat. So platinum, where it is now and where it's going, and we're talking about industrial uses, has massive, massive, massive growth.
Well, it's interesting. Folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. My guest today is Deon Rebello, who is runs DCX, or from DCX Bullion, a company in South Africa. We're talking about diversifying your wealth and reducing your risk out there. It's interesting you talk about that, though, Deon, because for much of my entire life, platinum was twice as valuable as gold, or even higher. Yep. And I think you hit the nail on the head right there, spot on, that the heavy price, because it got up to like this is years ago, went to $1,800 an ounce, was so prohibitively expensive to make catalytic converters for automobiles that they started looking for other sources, and palladium came into play, looking for all. Yeah. That's the thing about commodities. That's another thing to keep in mind, is that when commodities price themselves out of the market, people look elsewhere. And so I'm a huge ice hockey fan, and the Hershey Bears are the local professional team. It's about 30 minutes from where I live. And that's it's not the NHL, but it's the tier below that. And so most of the players here go up and play in NHL. It's very good quality stuff. It's the oldest team, been around for almost a century. Anyway, when I started going there a few years ago, the tickets were $11 to $12. This season, I bought a ticket, and it was $38. Guess what? They've priced themselves out of the market. Do you know how I watch Hershey now? streaming service online. I'm not going to go there and pay $38 for a ticket, $10 for parking. That's before I even buy anything to drink or eat. And the same thing with commodities. When the Chinese thought they were clever and they purchased all of the global production, save the one mine in California, which we shut down for ridiculous environmental reasons. Anyway, but they bought up all the rare earth element mines around the planet that were in operation. Plus, they have a significant amount in China itself. And suddenly they controlled almost 100% of the global rare earth element production for all these minerals that, by the way, just let me dispel this, folks. Rare earth elements are not rare by and large. They're actually plentiful. The thing is that they're rarely distributed. So unlike gold and silver and coal and iron and things like that, where you find massive deposits in a spot where you can just dig up and, oh, look, it's mostly this. When it comes to rare earth elements, like a little speck here, a little speck there. So you got to destroy entire mountainsides and dig them up just to get them out. So that's a misnomer, rare earth elements. But the Chinese tried to punish the Japanese over those little islands off the coast, politics, the Kuril Islands. And they said, aha, these are our islands. You ran into our fishing boats. We'll fix you. So they stopped shipping rare earth elements to Toyota and others who manufactured the Prius and electric cars. And for 6 months, Japanese car production was thrown for a loop for electric cars. Well, they found alternate minerals. They found alternate ways to do it. It was not optimal, but they found ways to improve it, and they got back into market. In the meantime, now China can't sell those things for the prices they had before. They undermine their own market. So I think it's just a consideration people ought to be aware of too. Now, there's a comment here in the chat. Excuse me. That I'm all choked up talking about gold. Anyway, there's a comment here from one of the viewers that said. Something about your site, and there's Stevie said, but there's no credit card facilities on DCX Bullion. Now, let me address that, and then maybe you get it better. But what I infer from that is he's saying that he goes to your website and he can't do transactions in credit cards. If in fact that's true, I'm going to guess you've already mentioned that you operate on small margins. The credit card companies are criminal. they take in South Africa, they take typically 5% of a transaction. If in fact that's the case, and if I were to go to your website and buy bullion, and if they charge you 3 to 5%, you wouldn't make money, you'd lose money. Am I right?
Yeah. Okay. Let me clarify that. The MMC is, you can go online, you create a profile, you upload all your FICA documents. And then it will take you to a paid site, which is then you can load your credit card details, and it does that full processing. Our e-commerce site is not there yet. And of course, there you send an inquiry, and then we will then come back to you and we'll then process it. That's the only reason for that. And it's very unfortunate. But, in a business like we are in, where we mention bullion, and when we started with the banks applying for merchant numbers, as soon as you mentioned gold, I mean the interest disappeared. People were not wanting to do business with you because of the risk, that it's a high risk, and so we battled with that, but we've now got to a position, and we actually, like I said, through Fidelity, we've now got a very clear idea as far as the only thing that was holding our e-commerce site to be fully functional was the insurance and deliveries. And that should be sorted out within the next couple of weeks, and that will then go live. So on your bulk purchases, yes, send an inquiry. We will then at info@dcxbullion.com, and we will then respond to it in due course. As far as the MMC, you can go on, you can sign up, and you can become part of the MMC family right now today as we speak. So that's there and it's available. But Chris, you talk about merchant fees. Yes. And we in small margin business, and I can tell you now, it does take a big knock on the business. And again, it's volume. So, we in this for the long haul. And by no means am I trying to sell something that I can sell to you today and then I'm gone tomorrow. We've got a journey, and we've already established ourselves with our current client base where, we've got a lot of clients that are buying on a regular basis because they know what we're doing and they trust what we're doing with their bullion, be it we deliver to them or we vault on their behalf. So we're getting something right. And right now, it's that process of getting the company bigger. Once we at a larger scale, the economies of scale on that's when we will start to make money. And not to say that we shouldn't make money, but we're not in it to pull the ring out of this. Else, and the amazing thing is what dictates that is the price of the market. If this ounce is too expensive, people won't buy it. Yeah. It's that simple. And that's why we got to make sure that we are completely market relevant. And that for us is our benchmark.
Well, let me just do this. We all know the phrase "the elephant in the room." Well, I've adapted that phrase. It's no longer in the South African context. It's no longer the elephant in the room. It's the hippo in the room, or Ramaphosa. So anyway, it's the hippo in the room. Let's discuss the hippo in the room, Deon. All right, we all know that South Africa is just a land of peace and honey, and it's so safe, and there's nothing happening there. Of course, I'm speaking to my international audience now. So, it's not like anything ever gets stolen. Property, buckies, farms, jewelry, money, buildings broken into. So this bullion is stored. It's protected somewhere. But even security fails. Look, it's in the Army. Trust me, we have the best security plans, but sometimes events overcome it. So is this stuff insured or something? If someone has an account with you, is there some kind of insurance if in case it gets robbed? Or I don't know, you get a Canary Islands like volcano that spews all over your warehouse and dumps lava on top of it. Is there some kind of insurance policy to back people's holdings?
Okay, so that's a great question, Chris. Firstly,
I know it's a great question. That's why I'm here.
Well, exactly, and and I'm grateful for the time. I will tell you this. It's been our first conversation that we had about a week or so ago, and we chatted rugby. I thought, okay, well, this American knows and understands us better than most people do. But yes, it's a great question. And the important thing is we partnered with Fidelity, and of course they are the biggest security company on the continent and in the Southern Hemisphere. They have a high value vault where we store all our clients' bullion, and that is underwritten by Lloyd's of London. So we completely have made sure, and of course Fidelity hold that. So we're the custodians on behalf of our clients, and we hold it in their vault. But Fidelity then give us this insurance cover on that. All deliveries, and we insist upon it, are insured to full value. So if there are, and this is, as you say, this is South Africa, if people start to realize that a light envelope has value in it, they're going to start to open it. I spoke earlier about risk, and that's also where we're very clear on risk, on how we, the way we do things, from dispatching, all those kind of things. We literally try and mitigate as much of that risk as possible, that we don't put clients under any risk. And so a lot of that you'll see when we do the deliveries, it's very discreet. We make sure that it's to the client specifically, and all those kind of things. So, and the amazing thing is with Fidelity, we're now going into new technology, which we're going to be releasing in the next probably month, or probably in the new year, where we, as far as identification and all that's going to be to a whole different level. And in fact, this is technology that is cutting edge, where, the person receiving it will have to have an ID check, and all those kind of things would be backing it. So we're going that extra mile to make sure that we're protecting our clients from deliveries. If people choose to, and as you say, some people want to hold bullion with them, and they're concerned about it, things like that. We more than happy for them to hold it, but we also do say be very wise on where you vault it and where you put it and where you store it within your own home. Make sure it's also not advertised. But again, that's why we've got Fidelity. That's why we got that high value vault available for clients.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I mean, if you guys could assure me that when you transit your metals that they're secured by Leon Prinsloo, I'll feel a lot more comfortable. You know who he is, right? That's the Leo Prince. He's the guy that was the Hatfield, the mobile phone heist that took place a few months ago.
Oh, yes.
If that guy's on the scene, I'm feeling good about transit. Did you see the video of that? That was horrific.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, I've had my own touch with crime, as most South Africans have, and I think when you experience that, it's quite a surreal moment in your life and in your own being. But to watch that, and I mean, it was quite something to see how he reacted. And I mean, the way he rode, and you could see, I mean, he just went back into what he knew, and he went and did procedures. And you can see that he's a highly, highly competent and professional man. And the way that it was dealt with, I mean, it's enjoyable to watch, but to think that that's happening, and it's happening around us all the time, is the crazy part.
Well, indeed. In fact, that was in Hatfield, which was a plush part of Pretoria. I mean, I've got thousands of hours walking around those streets and driving right there where that KFC and McDonald's is, right where that happened. Pick when I saw where it's at, I picture myself, oh my goodness, I could have been in the parking lot observing this, because I've been there so many times. But also the other thing too is that You mentioned Lloyd's of London. Okay, they're not shabby. They've been around since like 1686, so that's a going concern. They're going to be around a while. We'll see them around insuring stuff. So, yeah. Now let me just share this before we wrap up here, and that's I want the viewing audience to know that neither Deon or myself are hawking any products or telling you should do this or do that. We had a conversation here as we opened the program up talking about sovereign debt crisis, about quantitative easing, about economics, things like that. And I asked him about his company and what they do, so you can be better informed and learn about it if you're curious. But one thing we've definitely not done, I don't think we're not Cassandras. We haven't said the sky is falling, but there really is a serious situation here. I mean, honestly, if people would take a moment and pull back the curtain and look in there, they would see the shelves are kind of bare in most of our economies around the world. There's nothing backing up our currencies other than confidence. And people are losing confidence in governments by the hour. I mean, look at the demonstrations in Melbourne last week. 400,000 people rock up to protest against the government's draconian lockdown laws. All over Europe, the Austrians, they locked down too many of the citizens who haven't been jabbed. And so thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people come out in the streets. And of course, they're all demonized as people who aren't jabbed. But the reality is that a lot of those people, most of them actually been jabbed. They're just angry about what's happening. Paris, Berlin, London. I'm not predicting any impending doom here, but what I'm saying is that confidence in governments must be around the globe at an all-time low at this point. And when confidence is low in a government, that means confidence in the currency that they hawk is going to be lower too. And so we're just talking about diversification. We're not being Cassandras, are we, Deon?
No. And let me reiterate what I said is, do I believe do I want a Great Depression to happen or a market correction of that proportion? No. But is it possible? Yes. Where we are right now, these things are possible. Is South Africa going to experience a sovereign default? The likelihood is, if you go, and you can go to any good economist in this country, read up on them, and they will all say we're right in the midst of it. Mm-hmm. So, for me, it's that analogy I used about the frog in the water. Mm-hmm. And this is all, if I can get that message to people tonight, is change the way you're thinking about your money. Change the way of how you invest your money and hold it and protect your wealth. Bullion isn't a short-term gain. If I buy today and sell tomorrow, it's not about that. It's about saying, I want to invest for the next 5 to 10 years or work on a 7-year cycle. I mean, one of our clients, he works on 7-year cycles. So he's got children, he's got grandchildren, and he invests according to say, well, by the time that child's 21, he would have gone through 3 cycles, and therefore he will have X, Y, and Z. And he then buys his bullion according to that. So there's many ways of doing it, but the important thing here is bullion is a long-term thing. What we've painted the picture is where it is and where it can go. And the exciting thing is, if you are going to be investing and moving, well, let's take away the investing word, because it is, we are not authorized in investment.
If you're going to store value.
Yeah, exactly. And the important thing here is it's about moving your wealth out of rands. And if you can do that tonight, and we've just spurred that on, that one thing, and it's not about even my business, it's about making sure people are starting to make educated decisions about where they will be or where their wealth will be in the next 5 to 10 years. And all I say is pay attention to what's happening and start to look to diversify. As I said, Chris, to put everything into one thing, it's gambling. Yeah. And this isn't about gambling. This is about diversification and putting portions of your wealth, be it on a monthly basis or in portions, into bullion. And based on the history of bullion, if we look, and it's at Winston Churchill saying, the further we look into the past, the more we see into the future. And there's a lot of truth in that. There's a hell of a lot of truth in that. Yep. And we need to be mindful of where the cycles of gold have gone. And you mentioned the whole 1971 and everything that happened there and in 1980. And these things happen. But through those cycles, amazingly, the performance of gold over those periods still had an annualized return of 8%.
That's right up there with stocks, but stocks carry the danger that companies go out of business. Gold doesn't go out of
And
business.
the difference is
still
you
exists.
own it.
That's right. It still
Yeah,
exists.
that's the difference.
So
it's
if-
not
if-
a piece of paper.
If the value of bullion drops, you still got the bullion. And if you can wait and if you can survive, then it'll go back up later on. The bottom line here,
Exactly.
we're going to wrap up in a second, but the bottom line here is diversification. I've always told people, because
100%.
I'm not an investment advisor either, but people, especially soldiers, always ask me what they should do. And I tell them, well, you should have to do what you're comfortable with. You should learn it. You should only invest in things or get involved in things you understand, and you should be smart about what you're doing. And so, a little bit of cash for emergencies, whether you keep it in a mattress or in a tin jar in the backyard, wherever you keep it at, don't tell me, but a little bit of cash for emergencies. And, if you live in Europe, you're going to want to have more than one currency before the euro came in, but now you only need the euro. But a little bit of cash for emergencies, so maybe some stocks, maybe some bullion, maybe, this, that, and the other, and maybe real estate. I'm not a fan of real estate, but it's also an investment too. But it just diversifies the key thing here. Now here's something Stevie asked, and then I'm gonna ask you for a final comment here. But Stevie said, going to use my discover. No, that's not it. It's the wrong one. That wasn't Stevie. Stevie said, what? No promo code? Just signed it from Medallion Club. Well, folks, if you enter Chris Wyatt, one word, Chris Wyatt, at the DCX Bullion site, I guarantee you get a 0% discount. It's a special for today. Sign up with Chris Wyatt, you get a 0% discount.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
Well, you guys didn't offer discount.
Created a whole lot of problems for me, but yeah, they can do that. Actually, use your Chris Wyatt as a promo code, so we know where it's coming from.
Do you actually have promo codes? I was joking.
There is a promo code there, but as I said, margins are so fine. But
well, that's why I was joking. I mean, I'm not
work on value. The important thing there is we work on value, and again, it comes down to those kind of things. But yeah, I'd love people to use that, so then we've also got an idea of where it's coming from.
Well, Deon, I did say a discount of 0%, so I didn't really put you.
Yeah, I heard that. I like that post.
Wait a second, I used the code. I didn't get anything off. But so anyway, but seriously, listen, Deon, it's been a distinct pleasure to have you on. Thanks for coming on. I know you've been making the rounds, and I feel like yesterday's leavings, but that's okay. No, I'm just kidding. But
no, Chris.
No, look, I don't mind coming after Gareth Cliff. He's a good oak, but I came out and defended him recently, so I was on his program a few months ago, but over that nonsense that happened. But so thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. Hopefully people are a little bit better informed. And if you want to find out about DCX Bullion and if you're interested in taking a look at it, look below the video. There's a link down there. It'll take you right to their website. But I do have one question before I give you the final word. I'm sorry. I just got to string it a little bit longer here. I have an international audience. Now, people are always asking me, well, do I have a, what's that, Zapper code or whatever on my channel? I don't have a Zapper code because that's only for South African bank accounts. I don't have a South African bank account. So can people around the world, can they set up an account with you? Or do you allow foreign accounts? Is that permissible? How does that work? Or is it just for South Africans?
Chris, you raised something that's quite poignant because we're actually dealing with that right now. And yes, the answer is yes, we can. We can take international people. We can do it from a vaulting or an export perspective. So that is possible. And we, like I said, tax consulting in South Africa is one of our alliance partners. And funny enough, I was actually in meetings with them today. We were clarifying that because amazingly, this was about South Africa for us as a business, and we always had a bigger term vision. I mean, our vision is to go northwards of our borders and to make sure that we could become the vehicle for wealth management over this continent. But we anticipated it in South Africa, and suddenly we're getting inquiries from Botswana, from Namibia, from Eswatini. And we've had even interest as far as Cambodia. So wow. We are aware that there is an international market, and we are open for business. The important thing is it's about value, and that's what we're very big on.
All right, well, folks, check out the website. And to be fair, I mean, listen, in SADC, Namibia and Botswana and Eswatini, which is, of course, the e-commerce capital of the world, Eswatini. These are just extensions of South Africa's economy. So it shouldn't be too difficult for you to do business there because the rules and regulations are pretty similar and you're within SADC. But outside there, I suppose it can be a bit of a challenge. But folks, check out their site. With that, Deon, I'm going to give you the chance for the last word here. Not last word because I get the last word. It's my program. But your last chance to say anything you want to folks, whether it's about diversification, it's about learning about the dangers that are out there for us when it comes to to what our governments are doing and not doing in our own interests, with confidence and markets and currencies and such. Anything you want to share, just parting thoughts for folks just so they can latch onto it.
Thanks, Chris. And firstly, I'd like to thank you for your time and for the opportunity. It is sincerely really appreciated. And thanks to all the viewers. This is your time that you've taken out to actually listen to this. And it is appreciated. And as I said, for me, the one thing I really hope people take from this is to start thinking differently about their wealth and how it's been held and how we believe, what we were taught, what we were led to believe. You spoke about governments and things like that. They aren't in great shape. And I think the new world we're moving towards, it means that we as citizens need to, and as you mentioned it, Chris, with what's happening in Australia and around the world where people are pushing back. And it's about, I think a lot of citizens of the world are starting to realize in order for us to navigate this new world, we're going to have to start taking a lot of our own responsibility. And this is one form where, and the lovely thing with this piece of bullion, this is our platinum ounce there, is this I can take anywhere in the world. It's geo neutral. It has a value that is beyond dollars, beyond pounds, beyond rands, and has a value around the world. And the lovely thing is I can trade it in an ounce or I could trade it in a kilogram. And, so that's the lovely thing is that it's liquid, available bullion, and that's real money at hand. In fact, silver and gold were the original forms of money. From as soon as humans could start trading, we were utilizing silver and gold for those purposes. So yes, I'd just like to thank everybody for the time. It is sincerely appreciated. Get hold of us. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to always answer them. Or us as a business, we are very open in educating people, and that's ultimately our greatest aim.
Well, Deon, bye donkey. Thank you very much. Obrigado.
Well, obrigado, yeah.
There you go. Well, I don't know much Portuguese. That's about the extent of it. But
listen, mine isn't that great either. And I went to Lisbon, and I phoned my parents, and my dad speaks a bit of Portuguese, and my Portuguese was phrasebook. And I was like talking to him, and I thought I sounded great. But it turns out him and my mom were killing themselves by how I was pronouncing things. So, yeah.
Yeah, it can be entertaining when people, especially the English, try to speak a foreign language. They are entertaining.
Exactly.
They make no effort whatsoever to try to develop a natural accent wherever they're speaking. It's always the English accent. They speak French. Yeah. It's just, I just roll when I laugh. But listen, I've learned something very useful here that phrase I never heard before today. So naturally aspirated vehicles. I love it. That's good. So I'm going to keep that. I'm going to use that. Yeah, I never heard that term before.
My father's an engineer, so these are the terms that we grew up with.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, you grew up with it, so it's been around for a while. I thought it was a newly coined thing. I mean, for me, it's internal combustion engine. That's what we stick with. But naturally aspirated vehicles, I'm going to have to use that one. Well, Deon, bye donkey, Kelo boa. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to ask you to hang around in the waiting room for just a minute while I wrap up the stream, just so we can touch base after the broadcast. And all right, I'm going to put you in the waiting room. Thanks a lot, Deon. Folks, that's Deon Rebello, who has been our guest today. And thanks a lot for tuning in. Appreciate it. Be sure to smash the like button. It costs you absolutely nothing. We're talking about diversifying your income. How about diversifying your activities? All it costs you is a moment of your time to push that button right down there. And if you're not a subscriber to Chris Wyatt Africa, hey, take a moment and become one. What's my angle? Well, I'm here to conquer the world and spread right-wing... No, come on, nonsense. That's utter nonsense. I'm here to share interesting guests and interesting topics with my audience. And hopefully we all learn the body, the knowledge, and make it larger. Share our thoughts and views. But thanks to Deon for coming on and explaining this to us. Hopefully you found it interesting. And if you want to leave a comment on the video after the fact, feel free to do that. Again, that costs you nothing but your time. Your time is valuable. I do appreciate it, and thank you for being here. I will do a Night Owls tonight, later today, because I haven't touched on the news. I want to talk a little bit on the news. But again, Wednesdays are very busy for me. I'll wrap up here in about 34 minutes. I'll be on Ronaldo Host's program. Wednesdays with the Colonel. After that, I'll do a Night Owls. And then I've got my Common Sense Conservatives tonight on WSMN.live. Or you can catch it on the Facebook or on YouTube under the Truckers Independent Broadcasting Network. Common Sense Conservatives on the Truckers Independent Broadcasting Network, or WSMN in Nashua, New Hampshire, on the radio tonight. They have a WSMN Live, L-I-V-E. Check it out. Anyway, thanks to my guests once again. We'll catch you guys later, and that's going to be it for this stream. Again, smash the like button. Cost you nothing. Thanks for the super chat came through. I do appreciate that. Patrick gave a super sticker, said cool. Thank you for the 14 Rand super sticker, Patrick. I do appreciate it. Thank you all for your questions and input. We'll catch you here later on today, or catch me on Ronaldo's program, Wednesdays with the Colonel, where we'll be talking about all kinds of crazy things going on in South Africa and here in America, where Sleepy Joe is just napping through his presidency. Cheers, everybody.